Just label it, don't table it.
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 'Cause we all have a right to know.
We all have a right to know
If our food is GMO.
if our food is GMO.
All we want's a simple label.
All we want's a simple label
For the food that's on our table.
for the food that's on our table.
Oh yes on Prop 37.
Yes, on Prop 37.
Yes on Prop 37.
Vote yes on Prop 37. Yes, no.
So I want to give the mic to Dr. Vandana Shiva. You know her trajectory has been very long, over 30 years. She's an amazing writer, over 20 books. I don't have to tell you all about her. So we have her here.
Thank you, Miguel. So this is our trick or treat. And we won't accept the trick of being told that a label increases the price. I've never heard that one before. Europe got labeling. India's passed a law for mandatory labeling this year.
Yeah.
It's time the United States caught up with the rest of the world on the issue of food democracy. How did GMOs even come into our food and agriculture? First, did any of us ask for it?
No.
Yeah. No way. Which is why they're worried, because wherever a labeling law has been passed, the market just collapses. No, not because people go through the science and the risks and everything, but simply because people would rather choose what they know to be safe. I had the privilege in 1987, it's 25 years ago, to have been invited to a conference in Geneva on biotechnology. Now, at that time, there were no commercial GMOs anywhere. They were trying to start experiments. Some venture capital firms had been launched. But the techniques of gene splicing had been developed in the public universities. And in '72, here in California, in a place called Asilomar, the scientists who had evolved the technique said, we don't know the consequences. So we will put a self-imposed moratorium. No regulation, nobody, they themselves said, till we understand better the consequences, we won't use these tools. But by then, the chemical industry, which is the war industry, then became agrochemical industry, looked at these tools and looked at these tools in terms of trying to create a whole new source of profits. And I happened to be at a meeting where they were laying out their thinking. At that point, they didn't have public relations firms. They were basically saying that, and this is something that evolved through the 80s, they were basically saying the biggest source of profits for us will be patenting of seed. Because that will force farmers to buy seed every year. And not just buy, but to pay us royalties. Because a patent means a royalty. Now normally, an industry pays another industry royalty. Yeah? If I am a car maker, and another car maker uses an element of the engine I've evolved, I get a licensing arrangement and I pay a royalty. but it's equal players. This was the first time the competitor was now defined as the farmer. And they worked out and said, we've got to work out a system that prevents the farmer from having their seed. They said, it is not fair that farmers save seed. That's the language they use. It's not fair that farmers save seed. And they crafted. They got together in what they call the Intellectual Property Committee. And an intellectual property is a property in the product of the mind. Yeah? Worked out amongst themselves. Now Monsanto isn't a person, even though they pretend to be, and sadly in this country, more and more of the legal system is giving legal personhood to corporations. It's not a person, it doesn't have a mind, but it's got property in the mind. And these intellectual property rights were then brought into the GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, which then became the World Trade Organization. And I've just come from IFG. We created IFG in those days to deal with all of this new stuff that was being imposed on society through globalization. When I heard these companies say this, I immediately went home and said, I'm going to save seeds. Any seed I can find, I'm going to save seed. I didn't know anything about seeds. I didn't know anything about agriculture. I just started going to the villages and saying, do you have this seed? I'd ask them to save it. I'd save it. We started multiplying. We've now saved 3,000 varieties of rice. Patents is to privatize the ownership of seed. We started to reclaim seed as a commons, and we've created in India 110 community seed banks. Where communities become. But that's not all that we did. We kept challenging the very idea of patents on seed. The first, that seed is not invented. Seed is evolved, seed can be modified, seed can be contaminated. In fact, instead of ownership on GMO seeds, these companies should be getting sued for polluting our biodiversity. By putting one gene, a toxic gene, into the crop, they now claim they're inventors and makers of that life form. They claim they produce more food, no proof. We've done a new report last year called The GMO Emperor Has No Clothes. You can find it on the Navdanya website. There is no increase in production. There's also a very important report from the Union of Concerned Scientists, failure to yield. No, there isn't more food. There is more toxics. The argument was, with genetic engineering, we won't need pesticides. Pesticide increase has gone up hugely.